every industry and every organization has a supply chain. It's also a very complex function. So supply chains can be very complex. When you have that complexity and that uniqueness, that really opens them up to a lot of vulnerability to disruption. We conducted this survey across 200 enterprise supply chain professionals. And the goal of the survey was just to really understand what their main priorities are within an organization's supply chain, understand, the impact that COVID-19 had on the supply chain, and then also like the key challenges, the pain points that they're facing, and then the impact of those challenges too. A lot of really, really interesting insights came out of it. And we found that, when it comes to reacting to change, pretty much 80% of respondents cited that they have to react to, unanticipated change or disruption either weekly or daily.
How often are you confronted with disruptive change in your daily work? And when it does happen, how long does it take to get enough information to react quickly? I'm Nick LaFleur, and you're listening to Age of Agility, the podcast where we try to answer the question, why isn't there an app for that? This week, we're joined by our colleague, Kayla Mackay, a solutions marketer here at QuickBase and one of our supply chain experts. As you just heard, Kayla is sharing insights from a recent survey conducted with supply chain professionals about how their priorities have changed and why managing risk and building flexibility in the supply chain has become a much bigger priority since the pandemic last year. How has the pandemic and other disruptions affected your business resiliency and risk management? Is your tech stack helping or getting in the way when you need to react quickly to anticipated change? Send us an email to applepodcasts@quickbase.com with your story, and we might just feature it on the show. In the meantime, take a listen and enjoy our conversation with Kayla Mackay.
Welcome to the Age of Agility. This is a show where we talk to people who are facing unique challenges with an agility mindset. We'll learn from industry leaders, business and IT professionals, and even check in on our colleagues from time to time. Stay tuned as we explore the age of agility. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Age of Agility. My name is Shannon Curran, and I am your host. And I'm very excited today to be here with my dear friend, which I'm excited about. Those are always fun episodes for me. Kayla Mackay, who works on our solutions marketing team here at QuickBase. Kayla, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do in your role here at QuickBase?
Sure. So as you said, my name is Kayla Mackay. I'm a solutions marketing manager here. Our team is really focused on understanding our customers and how QuickBase as a whole, really from like product to service, can really help them be more successful. We definitely have a number of customers leveraging QuickBase like across all industries, but more specifically within supply chain. And that's really my focus areas. And then I also just love the role because it involves a lot of, industry research, but also talking to our customers and understanding what their day-to-day looks like, and then what are the problems that they're trying to solve every day too. It's very versatile.
Never dull, I can imagine. Yeah.
Never dull.
So I'd love to hear a little bit more. So we talked on this podcast with some folks, some experts in logistics, and when we talked to Martin Weiss about trends going on in supply chain, and we've talked to a bunch of other folks that work in different industries within kind of your expertise space. So would love to hear a little bit from you about why we're hearing so much more about supply chain, sourcing, procurement in the last year.
I think it really comes down to the fact that, every industry and every organization has a supply chain. And there's definitely more like supply chain heavy industries, retail, manufacturing, construction, but it's also a very complex function. So supply chains can be very complex, and oftentimes they're very unique to that organization as well. So the processes are unique there. And so, when you have that complexity and that uniqueness, that really opens them up to a lot of vulnerability to disruption. And so we all know that the past year has been, an incredibly disruptive year. And so, that disruption that occurs within the supply chain can oftentimes have kind of like a ripple effect. And it not only impacts the supply chain itself, the organization, their bottom line, but it impacts, consumers like you and I. And we've definitely all felt that in the past year from, COVID, food, and like supply shortages. The vaccine distribution is another example. So that's definitely why we've been hearing a lot more about it. But in terms of like an example as to why it is so complex, like if you think about a manufacturing company, for example, they're not only having to, procure all of the materials that they need in order to manufacture the product that they produce, but they need to make sure that those materials are getting to the right place at the right time. They're making sure that they're working with, high performing suppliers that are meeting industry regulations. So there's a lot of metrics that they're needing to track. A great example is like if the materials that they procure don't arrive on time to that manufacturing plant, oftentimes that can cause a delay or a downtime in that plant, and that could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. So there is a lot of risk that occurs there.
Yeah, and I think we were talking to, it was either Martin, I think it was Martin that said every supply chain is now global because we live in a global economy. Like it's very rare that you're going to have a business that doesn't have some impact with another country or another geography. So especially over the last year, as things were so volatile across the world too. So like maybe things would be operating, pretty much back to normal in one country, but there's still another country that's having disruption. I don't know what you've seen from customers, but I don't think this is going to change necessarily, right? I think some things have gone back to normal. I'm using air quotes for anyone listening on audio, kind of like reopening, but there are lots of things that are absolutely going to stay just as disruptive, it seems, whether it's, a ship being, stuck in the Suez Canal or other natural disasters, right?
Yeah, you think about something, random happening like the Suez Canal or COVID as a whole. And then there's like smaller things that are going to continuously happen, like, tariffs when it comes to sourcing from other countries and making sure that that plant or that retail company is tracking the costs associated with the materials and products that they're procuring too, because that's really important to them. They want to make sure that they're reducing costs while also reducing risk. They're going to continue to pivot their distribution and procurement strategies and processes. So yeah, it's never going to change really.
Yeah. So to pivot to talk a little bit about, so you're here specifically to talk to us about some research that was done. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the survey, kind of who you talked to and some of the insights that you gained through the research.
So that survey I'm actually very excited about because we conducted this survey across 200 enterprise supply chain professionals, and they were really within manufacturing, transportation, and warehousing, and then retail sectors. And the goal of the survey was just to really understand what their main priorities are within an organization's supply chain, understand, the impacts that COVID-19 had on the supply chain, and then also like the key challenges, the pain points that they're facing, and then the impact of those challenges too. So a lot of really, really interesting insights came out of it. And we found that, when it comes to reacting to change, 79, so pretty much 80% of respondents cited that they have to react to, unanticipated change or disruption, either weekly or daily. They're facing all of this disruption, but at the same time as they're, taking it all on, they're also taking several days to react to like the issues that occur. Right now, it seems like their reaction time is pretty slow. So you can imagine, not only like the pressure that these professionals are under all the time, but how important it is for them to have access to the right data and information, when they need it in order to react faster and make the right informed decisions. And we also found that, their reaction time taking several days And being so slow is oftentimes due to the fact that they have a lot of manual processes within their supply chain, tons of disconnected systems. They have data everywhere from, ERPs, point solutions, and then all of those manual processes they might have to like fill those gaps. And then just overall, like a lack of insights too. Those were the three top reasons as to why they had such a slow reaction time.
Yeah. And what is the sort of key I guess we hear a lot about visibility, right? And I think that feels a little bit like a buzzword, right? You just need visibility and everything will be fixed. But can you kind of explain through the data that we saw, like what does visibility truly mean? Like having access to all of your data, what does that mean? And what does that allow these professionals to be able to do that they couldn't do before?
It comes down to they really care about, reducing risk and reducing costs. And so, they do that in a number of ways, and they track a number of metrics across the board. So, for example, if you're in like procurement, they might be tracking and measuring like the performance of their suppliers, ensuring that those suppliers that they're working with are meeting all of the agreed upon standards again. They could be implementing a sort of like dual sourcing model to reduce risks, but that means that they're working with more suppliers.
Right.
And so with that, like there's a ton of information and data that they need every single day to really execute on their job, and do it effectively. And so I know that, visibility, transparency is often, definitely a buzzword, but it's really like, it is what it is. It's about getting the visibility into the data that, again, is like really oftentimes stuck in those core systems in those ERPs, because they need that visibility and transparency to make the decisions and, reduce risk and costs.
I'm trying to think back to, I think I heard maybe it was a few years ago here, but hearing about an auto manufacturer that like had visibility into their supply chain, they believed, until they found out that like, step 3 of like putting a bolt in a door was resulting in them not being able to attach the doors in step 85. I'm really, really like simplifying this. Clearly I don't work in an auto manufacturer, but so the issue is like they get to the end and they have all this scrap, right? And that's a huge, huge liability to their business. So it's not even just about having visibility of what's going wrong, but being able to act on that data immediately, right?
Exactly. So
in this survey that that your team conducted, we saw a lot. I feel like we saw a lot of parallels to the other research that we have been looking at over the last year that we did with Harvard Business Review around the importance of agility and resiliency in a business. And that is, within supply chain, but also in really a lot of the back of the office operations of a business, right? You went from every business saying customer experience is the most important thing in my business a year ago to saying actually resiliency and business continuity is the most important thing in my business, because I can't deliver for my customers if I don't have those things. So have you seen any other kind of connections to other research that you've seen?
Yeah, the survey that we conducted, it actually showed from like the perspective of COVID, for example, 50% of the respondents said that COVID had a significant impact on their organization's supply chain. Honestly, no surprise there. I think everyone really felt the disruption from that. But what was interesting is that, of those respondents, before COVID, only 34% of them cited increasing visibility as a supply chain priority for them. And 28% of them really only cited reducing risk as a supply chain priority, again, before COVID. And then if we ask them the same question, post-pandemic, what were your priorities or are your priorities? And that increased to 54% of them saying that, visibility is now a top priority, and the same with reducing risk, 54% as well. So you can see that shift, similar to as you were saying, where, it wasn't too important, but now because of all of the disruption that has occurred, they've realized that they need this transparency into the data in order to, again, be able to deliver to their customers and meet all of those standards.
Yeah, and I think there was some understanding during this specific disruption that like stuff's going to happen. Like we understand that no
Yeah.
one was prepared, but I wonder if the customer, whether that's B2B or B2C, is going to be a little less understanding in the future if you don't have this figured out, right? We've been talking a lot about, we talked to Kathy I guess this was months ago, I don't know what's time. She talked a lot about the customers like requirements of this like Amazon effect of like, we expect a package pretty much delivered to us before we've thought about ordering it. So
Yeah.
this sort of requirement that businesses are now going to have, whether that's a supplier or it's a vendor or it's an end consumer for, supply chain excellence, it does feel like there is this we all were understanding during when we all ran out of, toilet paper and other weird things we're running out of now. But
Right.
I do feel like the capacity for empathy might get lower as we just expect supply chains to be run better.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of organizations, again, within those, all organizations really, but then within specifically those supply chain heavy ones, of manufacturing, retail, and construction, they're really looking back now and assessing what happened and how they can, improve that and reduce that risk of it happening again in the future. Hopefully, the likelihood of another pandemic happening in the near future is pretty low. But if you think about any large disruption of any kind, making sure that they can, again, react faster moving forward is key.
Yeah. Cicadas, who knows? There's always something, it
Yeah.
seems, these days. I know.
Exactly.
So we've identified a lot of problems. That is something that I think the survey did a great job doing. But would love to hear a little bit about, from your perspective, obviously you work on the solution side, right? Like how can we identify solutions for really combating these problems and helping these folks that are up at night, like really identify their needs? Do you have some suggestions on, for the folks in our audience that maybe work in this field, about how they can really build with technology, kind of support a more efficient and resilient supply chain?
And I think in order for, an organization as a whole to, build more agility within the org, the people and the teams need to be able to be agile. And they're really only able to do that when they're provided, again, like the right tools and resources and visibility into the data that they need to, again, like do their job effectively and efficiently. And that's really because visibility can make everything easier and faster and inform them better. So, I think one thing it's a big thing and it's a critical thing, but it's, providing the teams closest to that work with the tools they need in order to become more agile. So it's just really equipping them with that and being able to, pivot when disruption does occur.
Absolutely. So this is the question we ask all of our guests. So how would you define agility?
I could probably sit here for like 5 minutes and come up with something super
There's
creative.
no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong answer.
But I don't know. I think about like agility as it is honestly like defined, and it's all about, again, like their ability to move quickly, the ability to move easily, and then also just think and react quickly too. And so I think when you put it in the context of everything we just talked about, especially within supply chain, it's super, super critical for supply chain professionals to, be able to do all three of those things in their day-to-day work. So I would, default to the basic answer of, it's all about moving quickly, easily, and, thinking and understanding the data in front of you.
Love it. That's an acceptable answer. We'll keep it. Love it.
Okay, good.
So final question. We always ask our guests, how are you? So I know that you had a big move recently, that things would love to, let our audience know a little bit more about you and how you've been. Is there anything you're reading specifically lately? Is there anything you're really interested in? That kind of stuff.
Well, yes, I did have a big move recently. Moved to Denver a little over a month ago. So Absolutely loving it so far. I had never been here before I moved here, so definitely an adjustment, but it's awesome getting outside a lot, hiking. We have a good couple of weekend trips planned, which is great. So overall, just enjoying that. Hoping to see some coworkers soon. In person would be great. But yeah, and then listening wise, podcasts I love is How I Built This by Guy Raz. He essentially takes and he talks to a lot of the founders of, the major companies that we all know and kind of dissects how they built it up. So that's really cool to listen to. Reading, I just finished Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights, which was really, really interesting. So definitely recommend that one. And we were talking earlier about you were suggesting watching the Hot Ones show, so I'll probably get on that. But yeah.
Yeah. The beginning of a lot of podcast inspiration there. I often think I could have a podcast all about the podcasts I like the best, but I wouldn't make anyone listen to that. So that is, I have a long list. Well, Kayla, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. For everyone out there, it's very early for Kayla right now because she is not in my time zone. So I really appreciate you taking the time. And
no better way to start the day.
Love it. And for everybody out there, make sure you like and subscribe. Feel free to also review the podcast. We'd really appreciate it. And you can find us anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts, as well as quickbase.com/podcasts and on our YouTube channel. So we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.
Hey podcast fans, did you want to learn more about our 2021 Supply Chain Resiliency Survey? Click the link in the description to learn more.